all of a sudden I'm seeing a potential war between India and Pakistan, and a Pakistani military official says they're ready to use nuclear weapons to defend Pakistan. I'm like, whoa, this just a lot of inflammatory rhetoric just out of nowhere for me. So what's happening
Um,
here? Well, the whole
yeah.
thing also just seems fishy to me.
Well, I
Just,
don't know. Yeah, yeah. Okay. What happened was that there was a terrorist attack in which a number, I can't, I don't know the exact number. It slips my mind right now, but at least a couple of dozen,
yeah, I think like
a couple
29 or something.
dozen, yeah, tourists, Indian tourists in Kashmir were killed, and so it was a horrific act. Um, Now, the Indians, I immediately accused the Pakistani government, or at least the Pakistani military, of being behind this. And I think that they have determined that at least some of the terrorists were from Pakistan. And, at least one. That's what I heard. I'm not sure. I don't know if that's been confirmed or not. But that doesn't prove that it was actually a government operation. It could have been, some sort of unofficial, unapproved militia and an unapproved, operation that was done without the knowledge of the Pakistani government. But the Indians are accusing, the Pakistanis of that, and the Pakistanis on their side said that no, this is a false flag operation. This was something that was carried out by the Indians. At least they've made that claim on one occasion. And I don't know what happened. I mean, it is possible that Pakistan's behind it. The tensions between Pakistan and India have never gone away, ever really since the Civil War way back in the 1940s. There is a lot of enmity between those two countries, and there have been border incidents. It's an ongoing thing. There's always been tension, and there's always been a chance for war. And because they're both now nuclear powers, there's always been a real chance of nuclear war and nuclear exchange. I remember hearing it be said on many occasions, going way back, decades back, that this is the most dangerous place in the world. This is the place where we're most likely to have a nuclear war. And there haven't been any incidents in the last several years, major incidents. So we forget about it. But now here's a reminder that this is a very dangerous place.
Do you have any conspiratorial theories we could explore? I just
Well, I
feel
don't think we need them. It could be Pakistan. I mean, that's again, there are, it might have been a rogue military operation, but, carried under the direction of a Pakistani military officer. That's certainly possible. This is, again, it took place on disputed territory. Kashmir has Pakistan has essentially laid claim to it, but the Indians have been insistent that it's part of their own territory. The reason there has been a dispute is that Kashmir is largely Muslim, and the civil war was a civil war that created Pakistan, was a civil war between Muslims and Hindus, and Pakistan is where the Muslims went, where they ended up. But Kashmir was sort of left over. That was a place that was largely Muslim, but it remained under Indian control. And so that's been an area of tension, a flashpoint. Now, I know that, like, Ambassador Chas Freeman also pointed out that is, he didn't claim to know what happened, but it might very well be just indigenous um, um, insurgents. It's just because in recent years, or from what I understand, this is all what I've heard from Chas Freeman and others, is that the Indians have suppressed, have oppressed to some extent the Muslim population in Kashmir, and there is a lot of anger, simmering, anger there, and occasionally, flashes out in violent acts, and that this maybe is an example of that. So I don't think we need to look at look far, look for some sort of foreign power. There are a lot of reasons why this could have happened within Kashmir, or where it was something that was between Pakistan and India. There is a lot of enmity, a lot of anger. There's a history of violence, both within Kashmir and also between India and Pakistan. I don't think we really need to go beyond those countries.
Well, what I think, and maybe this is just because of just what I've seen over the past couple of years and the uncovering of USAID and understanding how the CIA and Mossad work, is that they sow divisions. They find disgruntled groups in different countries and they support them. They support the opposition parties. We see this in Georgia. We saw it in Ukraine. We saw how our support of Al Qaeda and Al Nusra. We see Al Jolani now as president of Syria. And so it's just like, who stands to gain from this? And I don't see it too difficult to say, like, we know that there's these people here in Kashmir that hate the Indians, hate the Hindus. Hey, we can give you, a couple $1,000s or whatever it is, and then carry out some type of attack. Do you think that's possible? Like, who stands to gain from this? Like,
Yeah.
my mind is all around Iran and,
Right, right.
Netanyahu. It's like, could they start a war here and it distracts and they let it spread? Or am I being too crazy? Because we also like that Russia's Crocus City Hall, the music concert attack. That
Right.
seemed to also be something that was funded by Ukraine and potentially.
Yeah.
Victoria Nuland said we got some nasty surprises, and then that happened.
Right. Well, yeah, of course that's, and Ukraine had its fingerprints on it. I don't know that we've had real solid proof, but again, the perpetrators were fleeing towards Ukraine when it happened, when they were caught. So we do have real evidence right there. I would have to see some real evidence in this case that there was some foreign involvement. I haven't heard any, and it just seems like the local anger and is real enough that you don't need any external influence. And then the other thing is, sometimes you look at it and say, well, clearly, this party has something to gain. It doesn't seem so clear to me that, for example, the Americans would have anything to gain by a war between Pakistan and India. They do have actually, close ties with both countries, very close ties with, they're constantly wooing India, and they do have decent relations. The U.S. has decent relations with India, and India has tried to maintain good relations in spite of there are areas of friction. Again, the Americans have tried to pressure the Indians into sanctioning the Russians, and the Indians won't do that. The same thing happened in Pakistan. Actually, it was just when the SMO first began. The Pakistanis made it clear we're neutral. And then the Americans basically said, no, you're not. And they got rid of it. It was President Khan at that time. And it's even acknowledged by some American officials that, yeah, we got rid of him. And so anyway, what do they have to gain? I don't see. They have, an interest in maintaining relations with both sides. I don't see how this war would benefit them. I really don't see it.
All right. Well, this is why you're a reliable source of information, and I am not, because I want to go down the conspiracy route.
You never know. That's the thing. It's like sometimes I get surprised just by how nutty this world has become, and so you try to look at it as in a rational way as possible, but occasionally there's the nutty conspiracy theory turns out to be true. I wouldn't say that it's impossible. I just don't see any evidence for it, and I think it's highly unlikely.
Okay. Well, do you think that this conflict, it was just a small flare-up, and we should see it, tamped down quickly? I heard China has offered its services to resolve the conflict.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. That's all I can say. There have been, real exchanges of fire. I mean, the armies have been shooting at each other across the border. It's nothing. I think at this point it's basically small arms fire. But there is always a danger of escalation. One thing is that the Indians did immediately is that they declared that a water sharing agreement for the Indus River was now void. had essentially they're going to take all the water. They had made an agreement many years ago with the Pakistanis that you get a certain share of it. And it seemed like a very fair settlement. But now the Indians are unilaterally canceling it, and that's going to be hard for the Pakistanis to accept. I'm sure that's a real blow to to their economy, to the well-being of their people. That was a real escalation, and so yeah, there is some very very angry rhetoric on both sides. Let's hope. I didn't see anything, like yesterday. I didn't hear any reports of, of of conflict, military conflict there. The previous day I did. It was fairly limited, but so maybe cooler heads are prevailing. Let's just hope so.
Yeah, I mean, those are two huge countries, both nuclear powers. That would be awful if they went to war. I mean, we're talking about what, close to 20% of the world's population just between Pakistan and India? That's insane,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that in itself is World War size, just that those two countries go to war.